This is a sample of the information provided as part of the flexible training resources available through HACCP.com. Our training courses are designed to provide training participants with an understanding of food safety and quality system elements and also offer user-friendly assessment activities and competency checklists to complete the training cycle. Transport standards. Key definitions for transport standards. Transport or transportation is the movement of items from one location to another. Transport standards development. When considering the development, documentation and implementation of transport standards within food safety and quality management systems, the following information should be considered to ensure effective outcomes. About transportation standards. Food transportation, HACCP transportation and storage. Supplier assessment considerations. Temperature control. Transportation is one of the most important steps in the process flow of modern food chains, and ironically, one that is commonly overlooked within the HACCP scope of many food businesses. This includes the transport of all risk categories from low to high risk foods, raw materials and other materials such as chemicals. Internal and external transport methods must be considered to ensure all potential hazards are controlled throughout all stages of any food business operation. About transportation standards. Where the transport of food is the responsibility of the food business, all transport requirements should be included within the process flow diagram, hazard analysis and HACCP audit table. A transport policy should also be documented and implemented to include temperature control and monitoring requirements for potentially hazardous foods. Where verification is not necessarily required for each and every load, a regularly scheduled validation study can often be used to show control over the transport process. Documentation and records should be available to provide evidence for such validations. Maintenance and calibration. Cleaning and sanitation. Cross-contamination. Load security. Load and equipment settings. Corrective actions for non-conformance. Where transport contractors are used to provide transportation services, they should be included within the approved supplier program, and the following requirements can be defined with a supplier agreement or contract: proposed temperature and other nominated controls for specified products. This information can be specified for each type of food product being transported, and can be referenced to the product description and intended use, internal and external specifications, and to the transportation requirements nominated within the relevant legislation and industry guidelines. Verification and validation for temperature control activities at appropriate frequencies may be included as a component of the supplier agreement or contract. Transport security procedures. Liability and accountability for product. Corrective actions for non-conformance. Commitment to compliance with relevant standards and legislation. And loading, transport and unloading procedures which do not pose a cross-contamination risk for the foods involved. Where the transport of food is the responsibility of the customer, a documented contract should be formatted to include accountability and responsibility for products regarding ownership, as well as any other relevant requirements. Maintaining transport security. Receival, dispatch and transport security measures may include purchasing raw materials only from designated approved suppliers, establishing controls on incoming deliveries, limiting driver access to the food business during deliveries, thorough inspection and inventory accounting of delivered materials, use of tamper-evident packaging for finished products, and the use of tamper-evident seals on incoming and outgoing transport. Contemporary food safety and quality programs and systems often include requirements for the securing of transport modules or vehicles to reduce the risk of deliberate sabotage or terrorist-type events. In such cases, transport modules or vehicles may be secured physically, or by a system which permits the real-time acknowledgement of potential tampering. An example of a physical transport security mechanism may include the physical locking of transport modules or vehicles where these can only be opened by nominated participants within the supply chain. Where security systems are used in lieu of physical measures, these may include the implementation of controlled tamper-proof transport seals, mandated transport protocols and/or specified tamper-proof mechanisms for product rather than the transport module or vehicle. It is generally considered best practice to ensure that any implemented transport security protocols, physical mechanisms and related controls are documented and agreed with relevant parties to provide a consistent controlled approach. Related requirements are commonly included within transport specifications and service agreements between the dispatching entity, the receiving entity and any other process participants and stakeholders. Food transportation. Food must be adequately protected during transport. The type of conveyances or containers required depends on the nature of the food and the conditions under which it has to be transported. Food may become contaminated, or may not reach its destination in a suitable condition for consumption, unless effective control measures are taken during transport, even where adequate hygiene control measures have been taken earlier in the food chain. Measures should be taken where necessary to protect food from potential sources of contamination. Protect food from damage likely to render the food unsuitable for consumption. And provide an environment which effectively controls the growth of pathogenic or spoilage microorganisms and the production of toxins in food. In doing so, conveyor systems and bulk containers should be designed and constructed so that they do not contaminate foods or packaging. Can be effectively cleaned and, where necessary, sanitized. Permit effective separation of different foods or foods from non-food items where necessary during transport. Provide effective protection from contamination, including dust and fumes. Can effectively maintain the temperature, humidity, atmosphere and other conditions necessary to protect food from harmful or undesirable microbial growth and deterioration likely to render it unsuitable for consumption. And allow any necessary temperature, humidity and other conditions to be checked. Conveyor systems and containers for transporting food should be kept in an appropriate state of cleanliness, repair and condition, where the same conveyance or container is used for transporting different foods, or non-foods. Effective cleaning and, where necessary, disinfection should take place between loads. Where appropriate, particularly in bulk transport, containers and conveyances should be designated and marked for food use only and be used only for that purpose. Procedures should be in place to sort food and food ingredients to separate material that is evidently unfit for human consumption. Dispose of any rejected material in a hygienic manner. And protect food and food ingredients from contamination by pests, or by chemical, physical or microbiological contaminants or other objectionable substances during handling, storage and transport. Because of the way in which our food supply chains have evolved over time, many businesses use third-party contractors to provide a transportation service for the foods we consume. It is important to consider that transport of food products, including raw materials, work in progress of finished product may also occur internally within a food business. In such instances, it is crucial to the integrity of any established HACCP plans that all transportation routes are identified within the process flow diagram and assessed accordingly for potential hazards. If your food business supplies foodstuffs manufactured to a customer's specifications, it is important to consider any specific transport standards development requirements in relation to their items. Document. A document provides guidance and/or direction for performing work, making decisions, or rendering judgments which affect the safety or quality of the products or services that customers receive. Documented policies, procedures, work instructions and schedules form the basis of any food safety and quality management system. The following documentation formats may be considered to ensure ongoing compliance with specified requirements for transport standards. Transport Standards Policy. Transport Standards Development Procedures. Transport Standards Implementation Procedures and Work Instructions. Transport Standards Monitoring Procedures. Transport Standards Corrective and Preventative Action Procedures. Transport Standards Verification Schedule. Transport Standards Verification Procedures. Transport Standards Validation Schedule. Transport Standards Validation Procedures. Transport Standards Training Procedures. If your food business supplies foodstuffs manufactured to a customer's specifications, it is important to consider any specific transport standards documentation requirements in relation to their items. You may wish to visit the Transport Standards Template section of HACCP.com for examples of transport standards documentation, record and resource formats commonly applied within food safety and quality systems. Implementation. Implementation is the application of documented food safety and quality system elements into the actual business operation. The implementation of transport standards within any food business requires genuine commitment from senior management, staff and visitors to ensure the nominated goals of implementation are achievable on an ongoing basis. It is a step which requires significant planning and consideration of general and specific food business circumstances to ensure the outcomes of transport standards do not negatively impact upon the safety and quality of the food items dispatched from the business. Implementation of transport standards must include the clear definition of responsibilities and authorities for all levels of participation by senior management, staff and visitors to the site. When implementing transport standards within a food safety and quality system, you may wish to consider the following requirements prior to completion: communication and display of the transport standards policy. Completion of verification and validation of transport standards development procedures. Availability of transport standards implementation procedures and work instructions. Availability of transport standards monitoring procedures and record templates where applicable. Availability of transport standards corrective and preventative action procedures and record templates where applicable. Availability of the transport standards verification schedule. Availability of transport standards verification procedures. Availability of the transport standards validation schedule. Availability of transport standards validation procedures. Completion of transport standards training procedures. Completion of product design and development requirements related to transport standards. Did you know that HACCP.com includes resources that allow you to create, manage and implement GFSI and HACCP-based food safety and quality programs? Improve your food safety and quality skills and knowledge? Train and develop your team to create better food safety and quality outcomes? Find suppliers and service providers to partner with your business? The information and training resources available through HACCP.com included a variety of formats, such as website content, MP4, MP4 and text, MP3, PDF and slideshow. Are you ready to take the next step in your food compliance journey? Visit HACCP.com today to create your profile and access the full versions of our food safety and quality information packages and much more.